Hey guys, Weiss here. Welcome to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It is super helpful. If you like retro gaming, you definitely came to the right place. And if you like the NES, I think you're gonna like this video. I'm talking about my Mount Rushmore of NES titles. Now, what does this mean? The 4 most iconic games for the console. Now, for a game to be considered on my Mount Rushmore, it has to be great, it has to be famous, it has to be iconic, and it has to be emblematic of the console. Now, a game like Pac-Man for the NES, not gonna make the cut because while it's famous and great and iconic, it's not emblematic of the NES. I'm talking about games that are specific to the NES. When you think of the Nintendo Entertainment System, what games immediately pop up to mind? What games among those are famous and iconic? So anyway, let's get to it, guys. My 4 most iconic games for the NES. Guys, today's video is sponsored by yours truly. If you enjoy the NES, I think you're gonna really like my omnibus books. It's a 2-volume set filled with box art, screenshots, history, nostalgic stories, all kinds of great stuff, reviews and quotes from other sources, so it's not just all my opinion. Anyway, the NES Omnibus, volumes 1 and 2, you can get those on Amazon or direct from me. I'll put a link in the description where you can order my books. All right, guys. The NES, as you well know, was test marketed in 1985 and wide release in 1986. I got my Nintendo Entertainment System in Christmas of 1987. Absolutely loved it. Super Mario Brothers blew me away. It's the first time I'd ever played that game because at that point I wasn't going over to friends' houses and playing their consoles. I was older and, hang out with friends. We'd go to bars or whatever, or go to concerts and whatnot, go outside and shoot some hoops. Anyway, Super Mario Brothers blew my mind. I just happened to have my original copy with the hang tab. Yeah, pretty rare version of Super Mario Brothers, a pretty early copy. Just a fantastic game. Not only did it help resuscitate the video game industry after the crash of 1983, it popularized the side-scrolling platformer genre. Now, it wasn't the first side-scrolling platformer. That would be Rockola's Jump Bug from 1981. Arcade game that I've actually played, Jump Bug. It's actually pretty fun. Side-scrolling platformer where you control a car, but it is platforming. It's not a racing game. It's definitely a platformer. But Super Mario Brothers definitely blew it out of the water and became, just a household name. Now there were, some previous platformers like Pitfall for the 2600 that sort of helped, create the genre. But Super Mario Brothers just, took it all to a whole new level. Guys, do you remember the very first time you played the game and the first time you went down a pipe or found the, the warp zone or, just discovered so many secrets and surprises and the cartoon-like graphics and the excellent controls? Just a great game, completely emblematic of the NES. I mean, it goes without saying. Almost, because I have to say it, because I have to have my list here. Now, one game I'm not going to put on this list that actually deserves it is Super Mario Brothers 3, because as I've told you guys before, for my Mount Rushmores, I'm not just going to fill it up with, series. Like for Sega Genesis, Sonic and Sonic 2 both belong, but just just one, because I don't want, just to have a bunch of series on here. It's more fun that way and more interesting to put 4, games from 4 different series, or at least 4 different, not of the same IP and whatnot. Anywho, Super Mario Brothers, absolutely the #1 most iconic, most famous, most incredible game in a lot of ways for the NES. It absolutely belongs on the Mount Rushmore of NES games. Now that was a no-brainer, and I think these next 2 you'll probably agree with. But for my 4th pick, oh man, there's a lot of leeway there. You might disagree, but anyway, let's get to the next one. The Legend of Zelda. I have got my gold cartridge. Now there are so many things that are iconic about The Legend of Zelda. The box, with the die-cut cover showing this beautiful gold cartridge. The epic gameplay. It was first released in Japan as the Hyrule Fantasy, Zelda no Densetsu for the Famicom. I hadn't heard of that game at that point. I didn't know about it till it came over to the NES in 1987 as The Legend of Zelda. It introduced many in the West to the concept of the adventure genre with RPG elements, such as nonlinear gameplay. Now, a lot of you older gamers had played Adventure, Haunted House, and Superman for the Atari 2600 at that point. for you computer guys, maybe a lot of you and gals played Zork and games like that, but The Legend of Zelda just blew everything that came before it out of the water in terms of graphics, in terms of epic adventures, in terms of just iconic characters and colorful graphics for the adventure genre, at least in my opinion. And it's absolutely emblematic of the NES. Perhaps for a lot of you, it was the very first non-linear game you'd played, and it was just really a huge influence on subsequent adventure games, subsequent RPGs even, and just even game design in general. The Legend of Zelda was super influential, and you cannot think of the NES without Legend of Zelda coming to mind pretty quickly after that. So anyway, let's get to pick number 3, which I think you guys will agree with, but number 4 might throw you for a loop. All right, guys, next up, number 3 is Metroid. You cannot, I just can't imagine how anybody could argue with this choice as an iconic game for the NES, belonging on the Mount Rushmore of titles. It's another non-linear game, like Zelda. The gameplay's not like Zelda, but as with Zelda, it's non-linear. And as with Zelda, I played the heck out of Metroid. I played both of these games probably more than any other adventure titles in the history of forever, because I loved both games. I'm typically the kind of person that will, when I come into my game room, I want to pick up something that's pick up and play, an action title, a fighter, a shooter, something like that, a maze game. But with Metroid and Legend of Zelda, I love those. Probably my 2 favorite non-linear adventure type games of all time. And I don't have Metroid anymore. I bought it new when it came out, but I don't have that game anymore, or sometime in '88 I bought it. Love this game, but I sold my copy because when it started kind of getting valuable, complete in box, same with Super Metroid for the Super NES, I sold both of them because I'd played those games so much, and I don't know, obviously I wish I had them back now, but anyway, Metroid it was just a beautiful game where you really felt like you were on, or at least I did, on a distant planet. The black background graphics really made you feel alone and isolated, and the colorful platforms and enemies and everything was just a beautiful game. And, you know, we don't even have to talk about the revelation that Samus was a female, and the Justin Bailey password, where you can start the game in a leotard instead of a power suit. All these things led to its iconic status, but just the game itself. You gain new abilities as you go. It had iconic weaponry, including the power beam with charging, the ice beam, the wave beam, missiles, and screw attack, which an entire website and convention was named after. Gosh, there's just no doubting that Metroid is one of the most iconic video games of all time, much less for the NES. So I can't imagine that you could disagree with this pick. Although if you do disagree with this pick, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Now guys, number 4 was a very tough choice. I could have easily picked Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! So many people associate that game with the NES, and it is indeed great and iconic. Castlevania and Contra, 2 incredible action titles, 2 great platformers. Castlevania being sort of a adventure platformer, mostly a platformer, and Contra being a platform shooter, 2 of my favorite games for the console. But guys, I had to go with Mega Man 2. I mean, it's still regarded as the best game in the series by a lot of gamers. It has an iconic soundtrack. It improved upon the first game in the series with 2 more bosses, a save feature, better controls and sounds, Genesis quality graphics, at least in my opinion, and better level designs. It introduced 3 transportation items: levitation platform, jet sled, and elevator. It barely edged out Castlevania. That would have been my next pick, probably. Maybe Contra, but probably Castlevania. But one reason Castlevania didn't quite make it is because today, when most people think of Castlevania, they might lean towards Symphony of the Night for the PS1. But anyway, Mega Man 2 is so emblematic of the NES, I just absolutely could not leave it off this list. And it's such a great game. It's still fun to play today, and it's just amazing. I don't have my copy of Mega Man 2 anymore. I don't even know what happened to it. I might have sold it at some point. I still play the game emulated, but I need to pick up, in one of those collections, but I need to pick up, the game for my NES to make, my collection more complete. Not complete, but I'm not a NES completist, but I'd love to have Mega Man 2. So yeah, there you go. Let's get to the honorable mentions, games that didn't quite make it. All right, Super Mario Brothers 2. You know, I couldn't have more than one from a series, so it didn't quite make it. Mega Man, the original Mega Man. I considered that because a lot of times the original game might be considered more iconic or more important, but man, Mega Man 2 just surpassed it so much. Final Fantasy would have been a good pick. A lot of people equate the NES with Duck Hunt. For a lot of people, Duck Hunt was a pack-in title with their console. That was, you know, a lot of people have so many great memories of the Laughing Dog and everything. Ninja Gaiden, Battletoads, the difficult, you know, NES hard type of games. Double Dragon, Ghosts and Goblins, on and on and on. Speaking of NES hard. Anyway, guys, please let me know in the comments your 4 picks for the Mount Rushmore of NES games. I would love to hear from you guys. And remember, they have to be great, famous, iconic, and perhaps most importantly, emblematic of the console. Guys, thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing, and let me know in the comments what system you would like me to cover next. What, you know, Mount Rushmore. I love doing these Mount Rushmore videos. They don't get the most views, you know, compared to some other videos, but they're super fun, and I know a lot of you guys like them and gals, so I'm gonna keep making them, but just let me know in the comments what system you would like me to cover next. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you in another video.
It's me, Mario! Here we go!